I was beside myself when I heard the grim news. My mother-in-law needs a large amount of money for her heart surgery. Well, obviously I'm gonna pay for it, but then a little birdie flew to my window at night and told me a secret that my husband did not want me to know. Well, it turns out my mother-in-law, she's healthy as an ox. She doesn't need anything to do with her heart, no surgery, she doesn't even need an Advil. Guys, things are about to turn upside down in my household, and you can listen to it.
I'm 35, and my little one, Haley, she's 7, asked me why Daddy's not home yet. I told her Daddy's off to work, and we have in fact sort of kicked Daddy out in a way. I want to share why and how we got here. I got married at 28, it was 7 years, because I got pregnant by a one-night stand I had with my now husband, Bob. We didn't know each other that well, but we met again a month after I found out, and he wanted to get to know me better. I told him I'd gotten pregnant, and he told me that he was still interested and wanted to help raise the baby. We spent the next 2 months together and finally decided to get married in court. He and I soon understood that we weren't quite that compatible couple, but we both loved our daughter, and she is why we chose to stay. Why I chose to stay. He has a bad habit of lying to me often, and I noticed it quite early on in the relationship, but I ignored it because I thought everything he did for our kid was genuine. At the very least. I'm quite career-oriented, so I keep busy and don't have the time to sit and speculate. I earn more than him and have secrets of my own, like a bank account that has savings for my kids' college and school and for our travels and whatnot. This is because he's bad with expenses and he goes bankrupt, and when I say I've taken a loan from my company to make do, and that loan money is actually my money from the hidden bank account, and I didn't want him to get used to that, so I asked him to open a joint account for us. He said he planned on buying a house since we've been living in an apartment for oh so long. I agreed, and then he started transferring some money to that account, and so did I. That account can't have major transactions done without my approval as well. Now, for the past whole month, Bob's been acting pretty weird. I'd say much more weird than usual. Like, I've felt him getting distant since the past 6 months, but he said that he had a promotion coming up, so he did extra hours at work, and it might actually happen. Considering his not-so-bright history of telling the truth, I don't really buy it, because I give him the chance to prove himself time and time again. Coming to another problem in my life related to him, it's his mother, Frances. My mother-in-law. She's a difficult person to be around, especially with me in the same room. She's a little conservative with her thoughts, wherein comes the hypocrisy that her son was wrong for having a one-night stand. But I was the vile woman who lured him in and had no values of mine, etc. She despises the fact that Haley was conceived out of wedlock and doesn't really want to be related to her. What a shame. Haley's a wonderful kid, and even if you keep the conservative thoughts, she's not sinned or done anything wrong. Yet my kid was hated. Yep, Frances shamed me a lot when Bob introduced me to her, called me a mistake and all sorts of slurs. Anyways, so this one time I told Bob I'm tired of it and I won't go to meet his mom. Well, you know what? He agreed and said he didn't expect me to pay her visits when honestly Frances herself doesn't quite welcome my presence, and it's pretty obvious. Best he keeps both of us separate. So basically Frances and I don't meet, and so I don't know what's up with her. Bob lost his dad in his teenage years, so Frances lives alone, and Bob has a sister named Abby, who's married and lives close to their mom. So here's the funny part. Abby's the only sane person in the family. She understands how unreasonable Bob and Frances can get, and even takes my side when Bob, gets like he is. She's married and lives with her husband and child, and her husband's office is close to Bob's. So sometimes they would carpool together. Anyways, so my husband basically stopped adding money to the joint account for the past 4 months or so. And, I noticed it last month. Then I kept a close eye on the entire routine, and he would leave for work comparatively early, so he'd come back much later than usual, and it'd usually be even later on Fridays, and I was so caught up with her daughter at my job that I'd always wave off his quote, "Something urgent just came up at work," as an occasional instance. But it's every Friday. Every Saturday, he goes bowling with Tim, his friend from high school, and I've met Tim. He's a nice guy, but I never found him to be such a close friend of Bob. Okay, hear me out, guys. It gets a bit crazier. I confronted him about his absence and his frequent urgencies and about his forgotten share into the joint account, and he is, as usual, trying to deviate from the topic and asked me if we could just skip the quote interrogation till after dinner. But I insisted we must clear the air. He gets pretty angry at this point and stood up, trying to walk away, and I went right after him, saying that apparently he had left the table now, so dinner was finally over. He scoffed in annoyance, then finally stopped walking and just sighed. Then he said that he's putting his share somewhere else and he has reasons for that. Well, I asked him, well, tell me the reasonings, and he said that they're none of my business. I folded my arms and told him that whatever the amount in that account was had 70% of my share in it compared to his 30%. It's all for our house. So his missing share needed to be explained. I mean, he just shrugged and said that he didn't care about that anymore because he didn't see us living together for very long. Hurts. I silently walked away. The very next day, Thursday, I came home from work to a bouquet of flowers with a tag that read, "Sorry." I rolled my eyes, but in my heart I quite liked it. This was one time after a very long time that Bob did something remotely romantic for me. I would time and time again make efforts, but he would decline all of my advances, and one day I stopped. But he never noticed, and I'd given up. But this gesture, though very odd and unlike Bob, it kinda felt nice. He was all smiles when he came home that day. He put on some music and pulled me close, swaying with me, saying he missed us being us, that he regretted saying what he did yesterday, and I felt like a glacier and my heart had just melted. He had all the sweet things to say, and he promised me a house, a life full of love, and a good future for our daughter, and said all that he asked for in return was my support, and I told him I'd always give him that. My support. Well, we cuddled that night, and that was it. Probably too early for something more, and the next day was Friday. This time, there weren't any urgencies. Leaving Haley with the sitter, he took me out for dinner. Reaching home, I was expecting something more, now. I mean, it's been 7 months, okay? But Bob asked if I had a minute. He sat me down in the living room and told me that why he had been so messed up the past few days. The money troubles and his absence, and he said that his mother was sick, recently diagnosed with a triple vessel disease of the heart, which required a coronary bypass surgery. So he and Abby are trying their best to pay for it while spending more time with Frances these days because she needs loved ones. And she can hardly get out of bed, you know. I could only frown in confusion. Then I asked him why he would never tell me that. He said I'd asked him to keep me away from Frances, and I told him that didn't mean he couldn't tell me things like this, and he just shrugged it off and apologized, saying that he was only trying to look out for his mom and me, but he was worried about the hospital bills so he could not think clearly. I asked him how much he needed, and he said a lot. Well, I asked him what he wanted to do. He said that he needed money from our joint account, basically all of it or more. I sat in shock while he said that it was the last chance she might not even live. If we couldn't make this happen, I felt awful. I mean, I should meet her, and it was like he got electrocuted for a second and he sat up with a jerk and then told me not to do it. It was with urgency that it caught me off guard, and I asked him why not and fumbled a little before he said that she was already ailing so bad. Meeting me would only make it worse on her. Well, I narrowed my gaze because his tone seemed a bit fishy. Something didn't seem to add up, and I was determined to find out what the hell it was. I nodded and told him, okay. Then I said I wanted to get some sleep, and he said he would take the money now that he's told me, and I told him to wait until I thought about it, since, you know, it's a pretty big decision. He gets angry and calls me a heartless, cold-blooded witch. I chose not to react and just walked away, and he slept easily while I spent the night troubled with mixed emotions and confusing questions. Saturday morning after breakfast, I told him I had to get some groceries. I called Abby to clarify things, but she did not answer. So I went to his mother's house directly and spotted her in the driveway, instructing a teenage kid on how she wanted her lawn mowed. She was a little chubbier than usual, looking incredibly healthy. Couldn't get out of bed, eh? Abby called me back asking me how I was, and I told her I had a few things to worry about, and she sighed and asked me if Bob had anything to do with it. Well, you know what my answer was? Silence. Silence is always a powerful answer. Well, she apologized for being related to him and reminded me that I didn't have to deal with him because our daughter was old enough to cope with separation. I told her I didn't want to deal with the hassle of custody. She scoffed and said that her brother could not be half the parent I am, so custody wasn't really a problem. My fears of being a single mother were. Well, I told her Haley loved us both and would be really, really hurt, and then before I knew it, I was giving her a bunch of excuses, saying no one's perfect at all, and Abby sighed and told me I need to put myself first for once. I told her I couldn't be so selfish because I'm a mother. She sighed and asked me why did I call her. I took a moment before saying I just wanted to know how Frances has been doing, and Abby asked me, who? And I clarified saying that I meant her mother. She said, why? What's up with her mother? Didn't sound like her mother was about to die to me. Well, I told her that I'd been told that hadn't really been doing well. And then she corrected me saying that, oh no, Frances has been doing much better since she found her new dietitian. See, she gained a lot of weight and was now down 1/3 the extra pounds, and I congratulated her awkwardly until, to my own surprise, I asked her if she was sure that there was all to it. She chuckled and asked me if I'd hoped for something worse, and I awkwardly laughed and told her of course not. I thanked her for calling me back and put the phone down. Then I watched Frances laugh with the teenager as she handed him some money and walked back inside her house, fit as a fiddle. I didn't feel like being direct about what Bob had told me. Clearly he was lying. I went home and he was out, probably with Tim as usual. So I locked up the house and texted him to go stay with his ailing mother for a few days because I needed some time alone to myself. I quickly got a call from him and he asked me what I'd meant by that, and I told him I'd ask Abby about his mother and then went to see her myself. He was very quiet after that, and I asked him if he wanted to know what I'd found out, and he remained silent. Then he spoke angry, saying that he told me not to contact her. I told him he lied to me, so he doesn't really deserve to come home. He said that I had no right to tell him that, and I told him that I had not told his mother or Abby what he had told me. So he better stay out for some time because, well, we need the distance. The break to think things clearly, and he sighed and said I could never understand him before cutting the call. But it's been 2 days since, and we have not spoken. I want to think about so many things, but I don't have the answers to a lot of things to be able to carefully decide what I should do with him. He complains about me not being understanding enough, but then refuses to have me get him. Now, he's lied to me again, this time for certain, and I'm sure if I would go confront Frances about it, she would throw a fit and point fingers at me. You know, for hoping bad things to happen to her, and his mom's not sick. He's asking for money. But what does he really need the money for? Guys, what should I do? What do you think I should do? What's up, everybody? Man, what a crazy story. I can't believe somebody would wish their mother ill so they could lie and get money? Oh boy, let's hope karma's coming for this jerk. Guys, if you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed yet, take a second, hit that subscribe button for daily, entertaining drama animated stories. And guys, let's hop into the first update. Update number 1. Hello. The response to my post is pretty unexpected. Thank you for hearing me out, I guess. I know. I too think I've been getting manipulated and gaslit often. Guess I'm used to it, haha. Well, thanks for pointing it out to me, I guess. As for the ones calling me a bad wife for putting my husband on blast, I'm sorry for it, but I literally have no one else to discuss this with, and I don't know what to decide yet. So here I am, 2 days later with an update, and guess what? Yeah, you're absolutely right. Bob is 100% a liar. Abby called me yesterday and asked me where Bob had been. I told her that he had decided to stay at Frances's for a few days because we were having some issues together and needed to sort them out. She told me that she would gone to her mother's house twice and he wasn't there. He isn't responding to calls either, and I told her I hadn't spoke to him on the phone either since we decided to keep it no contact for now. Well, she then told me that her husband, whose office is right next to Bob, found out that Bob had gotten fired from his job last month and had a fine to pay. He said that Bob messed up pretty badly with his boss and got fined for destroying company property. I stood there in shock on the phone, and it was pressed against my ear as I heard this, and I could only breathe. Last month? So he's been jobless for a whole month? Where had he been going? Well, I asked Abby if she knew anything more, and she said that she called me to find out more. I was too caught off guard to tell her that I had not a clue of any of this. Did he destroy company property? It can be very much expected of him, though, since he does have these anger issues. She asked me where exactly he had gone, and I told her I didn't know any of it. Where would he have gone? Is the police after him? I don't know. Then she tells me that her husband's company has rumors about the whole thing, and there are many versions to why he got fired. Said there's CCTV footage, baby, of Bob being disruptive and destroying stuff, and now he has to pay the company or he'll be prosecuted and they're pressing charges. I fumble and told her I tried to get Bob on the phone. I tried calling him, but every time his phone was unreachable. Then I get a call from Frances later, and she asked me where I'd sent Bob away to, and I told her I had sent him to her since she needed his care and support. Well, she sounded confused when she asked me what she needed that for. I then told her that Bob told me that she had issues with her heart. Guys, she lost it, calling me all sorts of derogatives for assuming that she would be that weak. Her heart ain't going out. Said her heart was pumping stronger than ever, and nothing would affect it. Said her heart was still alive and well, unlike me, which was cold and dead and poisoned. She damned me and then cut the call. She's quite the character, isn't she? I hope he picks up. I do need answers, and I'm getting a little scared too. I mean, what do you guys think is going on? Please, drop it down below. Update number 2. Hey guys, thanks for keeping up. I did read all your comments and it makes me feel heard. So here's a weird update after a whole, week now? After I ended the call with Frances, Bob texted me from an unknown number that next day. He told me he was doing fine and wanted to meet out of town. As shady as that sounds, I asked him where, and he told me at a bar which is a few miles out of town. I asked him why he's hiding and what he's hiding from, and he told me that he would tell me everything once I come there to meet him. Curiosity must have piqued. So I went. He was dressed unlike himself. He looked like a farmer with an unkempt beard, a cowboy hat, and a dirty pair of mud boots. I asked him where he's been, and he said that he was at his friend's house that actually care about him, unlike his wife. I rolled my eyes and asked him to come clean for once and tell me everything. He paused, then closed his eyes and exhaled, and then he narrated the exact whole incident. He told me that he had gotten fired from his job a month ago, and I gasped and said that he was, what is he talking about? He told me to keep my voice down and relax, and then he told me that it happened because of a huge dispute, an argument that he had with his rude boss, and I asked him, tell me what he was doing in the mornings when he'd say that he was going to work, and he gave me this blank stare on my face and told me that he'd get to that in a second, but I needed to know what happened first. All right, I'll listen. He told me that his boss was always rude to him, and not just to him, but everyone that worked there, even to his wife, who was a very sweet person. Bob would do everything the best that he could, but his boss would always find moments and excuses to ridicule him and embarrass him in front of his coworkers. So one day, he made a presentation to pitch an upcoming deal to an interested party, and everybody applauded him. Then his boss stood and started nitpicking his work. Then he got pretty personal as he went on and on and on, and every question he asked, Bob was prepared with an answer. His boss only got annoyed and got his ego hurt or something, so then he started shouting at Bob for no reason. Bob had had enough, so he shouted back and had a full-blown argument with his boss, and his boss had recently bought a new car and would time and time again look down upon Bob's old worn-out car. His boss called all things in Bob's life cheap and absolutely worthless, including his family, and Bob warned him not to get personal like that. But his boss kept urging on, so Bob stormed out with a coworker's umbrella from the hangar and trashed his boss's car. Guys, the company CCTV footage of that, oh man, it demands he pays money back on that. Bob doesn't have the money, guys. Nor the willpower. I mean, he's too embarrassed to even tell me all of this, which is why he lied. I shook my head in straight-up disappointment and asked him how could he lie about something like this, about his mother. He just looked away and said that he hates himself for it, but he really needs my help now. I felt a sickness inside of my stomach, since I knew Bob had anger issues, but I'd never seen him have a physical outburst, and all I could think of was the possibility of him having such a lash out at our home. It made me think of little Haley, so I stood and went to the washroom just to throw up. I only felt nauseated though, so there was no vomit, and I came out just like that, and Bob was gone. Still had many questions unanswered, and I tried reaching the number he texted me from, and that too was not available anymore. The next day, the police came to say hello. They asked about him, and somehow I just couldn't tell them about the text messages. I did tell them that if I got spoken to, I'll let them know, and they didn't say much more after that, but they did a deep sweep of the house trying to look for leads, as they called it. I'm kinda scared now. I'm kinda really scared. I don't even think I should upload on here, which is why I waited this long to do so, but I'm thinking of going to his office and confirming his story. What if he's done something even worse and I never find out? I don't want to be an accomplice in anything shady, so I gotta get to the bottom of this. Guys, what do you think? Update number 3. I get that the situation has gotten pretty serious, and I've taken permission to post this update, from whom you asked, the police of course. So after I posted the last update, I went to sleep with the plan. I was definitely going to Bob's office the very next day in search of answers. When I got there, I walked in and asked if anyone knew Bob. The receptionist asked if I worked for the police, and I said, oh no. So they'd been there too, obviously. Anyways, so I asked about the whole ordeal from her, and she spoke of a Mr. Anderson who was Bob's boss. You know, the guy immediately senior to him, and a lot of you mistook the boss as the owner of the company. No, it's a fairly large company, so that wasn't the owner. Apparently Anderson is a classist, an arrogant guy who makes everyone around his life hell. He's a bad person, kind of. He had a little heated debate with Bob in the conference room last month, and then the conference ended, and both of them, they were separated from one another by other people in the room. An hour later, Bob was asked to meet Anderson in his office. He went inside and stayed in there for a good 10 minutes. Then Bob stormed out and went to the parking lot outside, taking the receptionist's umbrella. Everyone heard a loud crash, and it was Andrew's car window. Bob had smashed it in, then he beat the rest of the car up with the same umbrella. Then Anderson went out and called Bob's name and used explicits. He then shouted at him, saying he's fired, and he's going to sue him. And if he wanted to save his butt from jail, he better pay him double. Bob responded, saying that he would pay him back by doing it all over again. Security threw Bob out as his desk was cleared in the trash. He isn't allowed in the office anymore, and the receptionist kept an eye on him without even asking me who I was. Until she asked me finally, and I told her that I was Bob's ex-wife, and she just smiled. She said that I deserved to breathe the fresh air of revenge. So then I asked if I could meet Mr. Anderson, and she personally went to me to drop him off at the office. He was very annoyed, a personality is what he has, very stuck up. He was rude and asked me what I wanted. I told him I wanted to find out what my ex-husband did to get him fired. He threw a flash drive at me that caught my attention. Asked me to plug it into his laptop, so I did just that, and there was a video. The video was of Bob smashing the windows in of Anderson's car. I gasped in shock, and he then told me that he thought Bob was still married. I told him, well, he was, actually. I had just decided he wasn't going to be anymore. He smiled and said that I probably found out about the affair, too. And that's when the ball dropped. Excuse me, sir, affair? I asked him what he meant by that, and his eyes widened and stood there from his seat and asked me again if I'd known that Bob had an affair. I told him I hadn't a clue. He grinned and said now I had another reason to divorce him. He opened up the drawer and threw another flash drive at me. This time I caught it. Plugged that bad boy in, and there was a folder of screenshots. One of the photos and one of the videos, I saw Bob with a woman on multiple dates in the photos and videos, kissing and holding hands in public. The screenshots, oh boy, they were nasty text messages from the woman's phone, who had inappropriate photos there as well, let's just say. I was absolutely disgusted. The one thing I counted as a good point of Bob as a husband was that he did not cheat. And oh boy, was I oh so wrong. Anderson took his glass of water and held it up to me. I took it and took a sip from it, and he then said that the woman in those photos was his wife. I spat out the water inside of my mouth. It's his wife? Oh boy, he told me that it was okay since he let her go and she wasn't his type anywho. Told me that when he confronted Bob about it, he fought back and Anderson told him he was fired, so he went out and trashed his vehicle. So many mixed emotions if I'm being honest with you guys. Anderson then said that if he were me, he would teach Bob a valuable lesson for messing with me, and you know what? He's right. I told him I would get my revenge all right, and I'm getting that divorce, oh yeah. And I'm keeping my child, and Bob only deserves the worst. So I'm going to contact the police and give them the number that he used to text me and tell them everything else that I know. What do you think? Am I right to do this? I mean, should I do this? Update number 4. Hey y'all, I know it's been 2 weeks since the last time I posted, and a lot has happened. After reading the comments, I realized that the vast majority of you wanted me to involve the police ASAP, so I did. The police tracked Bob down with the number he used to contact me, and obviously I helped with that. Well, guess where he's been hiding? He was staying with another woman in her house as her boyfriend. This woman's name is Maddie, and she's 22 years of age, and apparently she had no idea Bob had been hiding from the police. She was told that Bob was in a toxic marriage and his wife and brother had ties with the mafia that was looking for him. This was reason enough for the woman to meet Bob discreetly. Only on Saturdays, yes, Saturdays. Bob used to go bowling with Tim on Saturdays, so basically my gut about Tim not being a close friend of Bob's was perfectly correct. Bob didn't go anywhere with Tim. The police went and spoke to Tim, who denied having any contact with Bob except for the occasional hellos at the grocery store. So how'd Bob find Maddie, right? They met online dating and have been dating for a few months now. Well, what about the affair with Anderson's wife? Julia is her name. So the police went to her too, and she confessed that her affair with Bob had been going on for a little over 6 months now, and she met him at her husband's office. Anderson had dinner plans with her, but he had extra work, so he did overtime and forgot about his plans with her. She came to the office and was told to wait since he was in a meeting, and that's when she met Bob. He and she quickly hit it off with a smart conversation and a common dislike for Anderson's difficult personality. It was a Friday night, and Bob offered to take her out for dinner instead. Well, she accepted, and they both had a great time chatting over dinner. They got carried away and made out, but soon caught themselves and decided not to meet again. When Julia went home late, Anderson was far from bothered about her whereabouts and did not even remember about dinner. Upon reminding him, he didn't even apologize and told Julia to grow up. This enraged her, and she waited for him to go to sleep, and then she took Bob's number from his phone and texted him. Bob told her that he wasn't in a happy marriage either, and his wife did not understand his wants and needs. This encouraged Julia some more, and she trusted Bob. They decided to keep the affair a pretty big secret, and only met on Fridays. Anderson seemed to never be bothered enough to be looking into it, and as time went by, Julia's feelings got involved. When she confessed to Bob, he reminded her that he could not leave his wife and daughter because he loved his daughter too much and he could not lose his job. She got furious and felt used, and she went home and told Anderson that she's been cheating on him. Surprisingly, he would know about it and knew that Bob wasn't serious about Julia and that she would come to him to tell him on her own. He showed her proof of it all and said that he had hired a personal investigator to this and she's been followed. He told her to quietly let the divorce happen or else he would have to bring all these photos and videos to court, and she complied. Then the police asked her about Maddie. She was appalled. She had no idea of it. Hurt and angry, she asked the police to throw Bob in jail because he deserved it. She and Maddie personally came to me to apologize and told them that I had no ties to any mafia. Bob is a habitual liar. And they apologized again and again, and I forgave them. Lastly, the whole detailed heart disease from Francis, remember? That is what's happening to Maddie's grandmother. Bob was not helping out with that with her money. He just looked at the medical and took the terms and made it his own little sob story. Well, guys, I'm filing for divorce, and Bob's gonna get prosecuted for sure. Well, what do you guys think? I still can't quite get around the fact that a guy like Bob fooled 3 women all at once. I'm happy all 3 of us are free of him, though. Guys, thank you so much for putting up with me and steering me in the right path when I felt so confused. I do wish every single one of you the best in this lifetime. Thank you.
I mean, this Bob character was so out of left field. Let me just break this down real quick. First of all, who in the world would ever lie on your own mother's name and say that she's sick when she wasn't sick? That could have been detrimental. I mean, come on. Imagine all the curses that he just threw on his own mom just so he could get a little pocket money, because this man could not control his anger and went after the boss's car with an umbrella. Anyways, I do want to know what you guys think about today's story. Let's say you were in OP's position. What would you have done if you found out, well, yeah, my husband is lying to me and he did not need the money for his mom? Let's talk about it down below, guys. Thank you for joining me. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every single day. If you guys want to be a part of it, consider subscribing. I'll see you tomorrow, and of course, remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.